Our first story begins with a whistle in the woods. Leo didn't just inherit his grandfather's house, he inherited his nightmare. The drive to Havenwood, Oregon, had been a blur of green pines and gray skies, a fitting palette for the state of his life. After a divorce that had hollowed him out, solitude wasn't just a preference, it was a prescription. And his grandfather's old place, a dilapidated house sitting on 10 acres of unnervingly quiet forest, was the only refuge he could afford. Free is never really free. Though, is it? He pushed open the heavy oak door, and the house exhaled a century of secrets. The air was thick with the cloying smell of dust, and something else underneath it. Something faintly metallic and wrong. Like old blood or rust. His eyes adjusted to the gloom, tracing the paths of sunlight cutting through the grimy windows. It was then he saw it. Right on the doorframe. A small but deeply carved spiral symbol. It was strange. A deliberate mark on an otherwise neglected home. He ran his fingers over it, the wood smooth in the grooves, and felt an inexplicable shiver. A static charge in the dead air. A forgotten bit of folk art. He told himself. Nothing more. The first few nights were exactly what he'd hoped for. Peaceful. The only sounds were the groaning of the old house settling, the wind sighing through the dense perimeter of trees, and the occasional, mournful hoot of an owl. He'd sit on the porch, a beer growing warm in his hand, and feel the tight knot in his chest slowly loosen. Unpacked. He cleaned. He started to breathe again. But on the 7th night, the forest began to talk back. He was hovering in that space between wakefulness and sleep when the sound first reached him. It was a whistle. Not a tune he recognized. Just a slow, meandering, broken melody. And it was painfully off-key. It sounded like someone was taking a casual stroll through the woods behind his house, whistling as they went. An unnerving thought at midnight. Still. He reasoned it away. A hunter checking their lines. A drunk neighbor from a mile down the road, taking a shortcut. He rolled over and forced himself to sleep. The next night, it happened again. Same time. Sam discordant tune. But this time, it was closer. Definitely closer. The hair on his arm stood up. He slipped out of bed. The old wood floors, protesting with a loud creak, and flicked on the back porch light. The sudden glare illuminated an empty yard, a collection of rusting tools, and the black, impenetrable wall of the woods. Nothing. He grabbed a heavy maglite from the kitchen drawer and stepped outside, the damp night air clinging to his skin. He swept the beam of light across the yard, into the trees. No glowing eyes. No snapped twigs. No sign of anyone. Just the whistling, already fading, as if its owner was retreating deeper into the forest. He tried to ignore it. For a few more nights, he'd hear it start and just pull the covers tighter, cranking up the volume on a podcast to drown it out. But it was a relentless, punctual haunting. It always started around 1:15, maybe 1:20 the morning. Like clockwork. The thought that it was just a random passerby evaporated, replaced by a colder, more personal fear. Someone knew he was out here, alone, and they were messing with him. A few days later, his nerves frayed. He called the sheriff's office. An old Ford Bronco rumbled up his driveway, and out stepped a man who looked as worn and weary as the landscape. Sheriff Brody. He had the tired eyes of a man who'd seen too much of the strange things that happen in the lonely corners of Havenwood, Leo explained the situation, feeling a bit foolish. But the sheriff didn't laugh. Instead, he got quiet. Real quiet. He took off his hat, ran a hand through his thin, gray hair, and looked off toward the woods. "Your granddaddy," he said, his voice low. "He used to call us about the same thing. Every spring. Like clockwork. Said someone was whistling around the property late at night. We came out. We never found a damn thing. I'll be honest, son. We all just figured he was getting old. Maybe hearing things." He turned to lock eyes with Leo, his expression grim. "But now you're hearing it, too." That single sentence hit Leo like a physical blow. This wasn't new. This wasn't about him. It was about the house. He had no idea his grandfather, a man he remembered as stoic and unshakable, had been dealing with this same terror. Sheriff Brody's advice was simple and chilling: keep the doors locked and stay inside after dark. As if he wasn't already. The whistling kept coming. A nightly siege against his sanity. It grew bolder. One night, it was right behind the shed. The next, it was on the front porch. 3 long, piercing whistles followed by an unnerving silence. Then came the night that broke him. The night the sound moved. It came from under the floorboards. I swear to God. It was like someone was in the crawl space beneath him, whistling up through the heating vents. It was in the house with him. He didn't sleep. The next morning, fueled by coffee and raw fear, he tore the attic apart. He had to find something. Anything his grandfather left behind that could explain this. In a dusty corner, under a canvas tarp, he found a small wooden chest. Inside, nestled amongst old tax returns and photographs, was a box of his grandfather's journals. His hands trembled as he opened the first one. And there it was. Page after page. Written in his grandfather's spidery script. Detailing the whistling. It had been happening for over a decade. Always in the spring. Always after his grandmother had passed away and he was living alone. He didn't know who it was. But he thought it was someone watching the house. Testing the defenses. He wrote of nights spent sitting by the front door with a rifle across his lap. But then Leo found something else. Tucked into the back pocket of the final journal was a folded, hand-drawn map of the house. It was a crude layout of the crawl space. The dark, earthen space beneath his feet. One particular area, near the center of the house, was circled in faded red ink. Next to it, a cryptic, almost frantic note. Not a spirit. A guardian. It protects the well. A guardian? A well? What did it mean? Before he could process it, his blood ran cold. He had called Sheriff Brody again, who came by to look at the journal, his weary face growing paler with every page he read. He handed it back to Leo, his hand unsteady. "Be careful, son," he'd said. "Don't you open that door for anyone." That night was the climax. The culmination of weeks of terror. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the whistling started. But it didn't come from outside. It didn't even come from the crawl space. It came from the hallway, right inside the house. Icy dread paralyzed him. He was sitting on the couch, shotgun in his lap, but his limbs felt like lead. The hallway was dark. The sound was faint but clear, and it was moving. Slowly, step by step. It was coming closer. He scrambled to his feet, fumbling with the shotgun, and screamed into the darkness. "Who's there?" The whistling stopped. Absolute silence. With a shaking hand, he slammed the hallway light switch. The bare bulb flooded the corridor with a harsh, yellow light. Nothing. No one. The hallway was empty, but the air was cold, and the metallic scent he'd noticed on his first day was suddenly, overwhelmingly strong. The sound was gone, but the presence felt heavier than ever. It was inside, and it was waiting. The whistling had just been an invitation. Now, something else was about to begin. He stared at the heating vent on the floor of the hallway, the metal grill seeming to watch him in the silence. The whistle was gone, but now he heard a new sound. A soft, rhythmic scraping from below, like a trowel digging through damp earth. He realized with a surge of pure terror that he wasn't just being haunted, he was being excavated. The whistling stopped, and a single, clear tap echoed from the metal grill of the vent. The figure on the shore, Ocean City's pale watcher. That lingering chill from Arizona made me question everything I thought I knew about strangers. But it wasn't long before another tale, from a completely different coastline, emerged. A story equally unsettling, shrouded in a truly inexplicable mystery. It was last summer, mid-July. College was out, and I, Kyle, was home in Maryland, trying to soak up every second of freedom before another semester started. My two closest friends, Jason and Marcus, and I, we were itching to do something. Just the three of us. Like the old high school days. You know, before different colleges scattered us across state lines. We finally settled on it, a weekend beach trip to Ocean City. Jason's family had this small beach house there. Nothing fancy. Just a 2-bedroom spot a few blocks off the sand. Perfect for what we needed, chilling out. Maybe a little partying. And just catching up. We rolled into town late Friday afternoon. The air was thick, humid, clinging to your skin. The kind that promises a scorcher. You could taste the salt, smell the sunscreen. The second we got out of the car, we hit the boardwalk, lost a few bucks in the arcades, and just people watched. The beach was absolutely packed. A chaotic symphony of screaming kids, umbrellas, coolers, and lifeguards constantly yelling at folks. It all felt normal, just a classic summer day. Later, back at the house, we grilled burgers, tossed back a few drinks, and got into some stupid drinking games. By midnight, we were all pretty buzzed, a little bored, and someone, I think it was Marcus, just blurted it out. Let's go back to the beach. There's something about the ocean at night. Right? It's completely different. Empty. Peaceful. The air cools down. The waves sound louder. We didn't plan on swimming. Just hanging out. Maybe walking along the shore. So, we grabbed some hoodies, our phones, and a dying flashlight Jason found. Down a side street we went, onto the wooden boardwalk, then clomped down the steps onto the sand. Just as expected, it was practically deserted. The waves rolled in with a steady, rhythmic hush. The only light came from a few distant lamps and the moon, peeking through some clouds. We could barely make out the water meeting the shore. We walked along the edge, letting the cold water kiss our ankles, cracking jokes, talking about nothing and everything, just killing time. Eventually, We stopped near one of those wooden lifeguard towers. The kind they leave propped up at night. And just flopped down in the sand, staring up at the sky. That's when Jason, always the observant one, stiffened. "Is that someone walking over there?" he asked, sitting bolt upright. We all sat up, squinting into the darkness he was pointing at. At first, I saw nothing, just a dark blur near the shoreline. But then, yeah, I saw it. A figure. Just a silhouette. Really. Moving slowly right where the water met the sand. Maybe 50 or 60 yards away. We figured, whatever. Probably just some other person out late. Maybe on a stroll. But then we noticed it. Its movement was off. It wasn't a casual stroll. This was stiff. Slow. Almost mechanical. Its arms didn't swing naturally. Its posture was just strange. Head tilted down, but not quite. It looked like it was staring at the sand. Maybe scanning for something. We all just stopped talking, watching in quiet. Uncomfortable fascination. Something about it put me on edge. Made the hairs on my arms stand up. "What the hell are they doing?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Marcus suggested they might be looking for something. Jason, always trying to lighten the mood, joked it was probably some drunk tourist who dropped their keys. We gave a nervous chuckle and tried to go back to messing around. But my eyes kept darting back to the person. A few minutes crawled by, and then I noticed it had stopped. It wasn't walking anymore, just standing completely still, and definitely closer, maybe 30 yards away now. That's when the discomfort really set in. We tried not to stare, definitely tried not to shine our light at them, but it was getting impossible to ignore. There was just something profoundly wrong about the whole thing. Marcus finally broke the silence, his voice tight. "They've been standing there for like 5 minutes. Who just stands like that?" Then Jason said something that made my stomach drop into my shoes. "He's not just standing," he whispered, his voice hushed. "He's looking at you." Kyle. I didn't know if he was joking. I kind of laughed nervously. "Nah. Man. He's looking at the sand." But Jason shook his head, a grim line to his lips. "No. Look closer. His head's tilted at you." And then, before I could even object, Jason pointed the flashlight. I didn't want him to do it. Honestly. Not at that moment. But he clicked it on. Aimed the beam. The light hit the figure for just a second. A fleeting, horrifying glimpse, before the battery gave up and flickered out. But that second, that single second was enough. I saw him. He was almost grayish-white. No shirt. He wore wet jeans, clearly soaked from the ocean. His arms hung completely limp at his sides. His head was tilted at a weird, unnatural angle. Not broken, but disturbingly so. And his eyes were wide open, almost bulging, fixed right on us. The very second that beam of light hit him, he moved. Fast. Without any hesitation. No wind-up. No shift in weight. He broke into an unnatural, full sprint straight at us. It was like he just launched himself forward. All three of us screamed. Aprimal. Terrified sound. And we bolted. We didn't even look back. We just ran, our feet pounding into the wet sand. I could hear Marcus behind me, yelling, Go. Go. My lungs were burning, air tearing in and out. We ran all the way back to the steps leading up to the boardwalk, scrambled up them, and didn't stop until we hit the street. Only then, gasping for breath, did we dare turn around. He wasn't there. The beach was empty. No footprints behind us. Just the endless sound of waves crashing. We stood there, frozen, trying desperately to make sense of what just happened. We didn't talk much on the walk back to the house. When we got inside, we locked every single door and window, pulled the blinds shut, and stayed up until the sun finally started to rise. None of us could sleep. I kept expecting to hear a knock, or to see that pale face pressed against a window. But thankfully, it never came. The next morning, we tried to laugh it off. Tried to say it was just some cracked-out homeless guy trying to scare people. But deep down, none of us believed that. The way he moved, the way he appeared out of nowhere, the lack of footprints, it made no sense. We stayed one more night in the house, but we didn't leave it. We left early the very next morning. Over the next few weeks, we tried to move on. But then Jason texted me one night. He'd been having dreams. The same dream. Over and over. He'd wake up and see the guy standing in the corner of his room, soaking wet. Head tilted. Just staring. No movement. No talking. Just standing there. I told him that was messed up. Chilling. But I didn't tell him. I was having the exact same dream. Everything was identical. The guy. The posture. Just standing in my room. Not moving. Not talking. Sometimes I still wake up, thinking I hear the faint sound of wet footsteps in my hallway. But when I check, no one's there. Then, last week, almost a year later, I was scrolling through this local Ocean City Facebook group. One of those community pages, a midnight chase, terror on the water. While the chilling figure of Ocean City still haunts my dreams, another memory surfaces: a summer night on the New England coast that etched itself into my mind, reminding me just how vulnerable you can be when darkness falls on open water. I grew up in Massachusetts, and pretty much every summer, for as long as I can remember, I'd spend 3 months in a classic coastal New England town. You know the type if you've been to that part of the country. Think weathered shingle houses, a faint smell of salt and fried clams, and boats swaying gently in every harbor. I had a big group of friends who did the same, and we'd get into all sorts of trouble after our respective summer jobs. We were all teenagers, full of that restless energy that only summer break brings. Always looking for something, anything, to break the monotony. I was 19 when this happened. Like most of my crew. Just old enough to feel invincible, but young enough to be truly, utterly dumb sometimes. One particular evening, my friend Emerson and I had this low-key plan: grab some beers, head out on his family's beat-up old boat, and just wait for the rest of our friends to show up. Classic summer night. Right? Nothing fancy. Just us and the calm bay. The boat itself was a relic. A faded blue fiberglass hull that had seen better decades. But it was ours for the night. We anchored between 2 other boats, bobbing gently as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. It was peaceful, almost idyllic. You could hear the distant chatter from the other boats, the clinking of glasses, the faint murmur of music. Just a typical, lazy summer evening. Then, The first weird thing happened. The two other boats, the ones flanking us, suddenly started pulling up anchor. No big deal. People leave, but they left. Both of them. Not even a wave goodbye. It was just us, alone in the deepening twilight. The bay, once dotted with a few lights and the sounds of distant revelry, became a vast, inke expanse. The air seemed to grow heavier, quieter. I remember jokingly yelling out, "Hey, turn the music back on," into the fading light, my voice echoing a little too loudly in the sudden quiet. But there was only silence. Just the gentle, almost rhythmic, lapping of waves against the hull. It was unsettling. The abruptness of it all. Like the world had just emptied out around us. That's when we saw them. 3 silhouettes, sharp against the lingering glow of the western sky, standing on the edge of one of the now distant boats. Just staring right at us. My first thought? Oh, probably just some other kids messing around, trying to pull a prank. But Emerson, he felt it immediately. The shift in the air. He tensed up beside me, a nervous energy radiating off him. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on those figures. "Dude, they're looking at us," he muttered, his voice tight, barely above a whisper. "This isn't a joke." I, being me, tried to lighten the mood, or maybe just deny the creeping unease. I grabbed the boat's old megaphone, a relic from his dad's fishing trips. A battered, slightly corroded thing, and yelled something goofy through it. "Hey, you guys lost your party? Just trying to be a clown." To break the tension that was suddenly thick in the air. But what came back, carried across the water, wasn't laughter or a shouted joke. It was a sinister, raspy laugh from one of the silhouettes. A sound that seemed to scrape against the night. Dry and chilling, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It wasn't human in its warmth or humor. It was a sound that crawled under my skin. That was the turning point for me. That was the moment my stomach dropped, and the casual fun evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. My palms started to sweat. Then came the splashes. Sudden, loud, 2 distinct plops into the water, cutting through the eerie silence. 2 of the silhouettes were gone, swallowed by the darkness of the bay, leaving just one on the distant boat, still standing there, still staring. It was like watching a horror movie unfold in slow motion. Emerson, bless his quick thinking, didn't hesitate. He was already frantically yanking on the anchor rope, his muscles straining, pulling with an urgency I'd never seen from him before. Me? I was still a little dazed, half laughing, a nervous, almost hysterical sound. What are they doing? Are they swimming? The absurdity of it, the sheer audacity, just froze me for a second. But then, the chilling reality hit. We heard it. Not just a splash, but the unmistakable sound of 2 people swimming, steadily, purposefully, towards our boat. The rhythm of their strokes. Too close. Too determined. Every stroke felt like a drumbeat echoing the mounting terror. Emerson screamed. A genuine, desperate yell that ripped through the quiet night. As a hand, dark and menacing, slick with water, reached up from behind the stern, trying to grab the railing. "They're on us," he shrieked, He had the anchor up by then. A heavy, barnacle-encrusted claw of metal. And I saw him, anchor in hand, muscles coiled, ready to use it as a weapon against whatever was trying to board us. He looked absolutely primal, ready to fight for his life. My instincts, buried under layers of 19-year-old complacency, finally kicked in. I didn't even think. I just gunned the engine. The old boat lurched forward with a sudden, violent roar. But in my panic, my hand shaking on the throttle, I misjudged the shallow water near the edge of the channel. We hit something, a loud crunch that vibrated through the entire hull, shaking us violently. We'd run aground on a sandbar. Hard. The boat shuddered, stuck fast. My heart leaped into my throat. This is it, I thought. But I didn't stop. I slammed the throttle into reverse, the propeller churning madly, digging us off the bar with a gritty, tearing sound. With another lurch, we broke free. I swung the wheel, ramming the throttle forward again, and we peeled out of that bay at full speed, leaving a frothing wake behind us, heading for open water, for anything but them. We didn't say a word for what felt like an eternity, just white-knuckling it, the engine roaring, the salty night wind whipping past our faces. The air, once heavy with dread, now felt cold and exhilarating. Finally, out in the deeper channel, the lights of the distant shore faint smudges. We slowed down, the engine settling into a more even hum. The shared relief was palpable, a heavy sigh that lifted from both of us, a shiver running down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool air. Emerson turned to me, his eyes wide and still a little frantic, but with a definite glint of triumph, and just muttered, "I told you so." He didn't need to elaborate. Every word was in that look. And then, almost unbelievably, I made a stupid decision. As the adrenaline started to recede, we noticed some things had been knocked overboard when we hit the sandbar. My favorite hat, some empty cans that probably wouldn't float for long. "Let's just go back for them," I said, my voice still a little shaky, but tinged with that odd, almost foolish sense of regaining control. Emerson, understandably, wasn't thrilled. "Are you kidding me?" he hissed. "We just escaped." But I convinced him, rationalizing it with some lame excuse about not wanting to litter. Or maybe just that dumb, youthful need to prove nothing could really touch us. We turned back, cautiously, shining a small, weak flashlight on the water. That's when we saw them, approaching boat lights. Fast. Not small fishing lights, but bright, powerful beams cutting through the darkness, bearing down on us with alarming speed. A full-blown high-speed chase ensued. Our old boat, bless its heart, was no match for their faster, slaker vessel. They were gaining on us, the lights growing bigger, brighter, more menacing in our rear view, filling our small cockpit with their glare. The sound of their engine, a deep, powerful thrum, was like a predator's growl. Panic set in again, colder and sharper this time, because now we were on even terms, boat against boat. I remembered something my dad used to say about evading pursuit on the water. Something about hugging the shoreline. Stay shallow. They can't follow. He'd always told me. So I did it. I steered us as close to the land as I dared, weaving through shallower areas, past darkened docks, and around small, rocky outcroppings that would have ripped the bottom out of their larger boat. It worked. The pursuing boat, too large to risk running aground themselves, had to peel off, their lights swerving away into the deeper channel, slowly shrinking in our wake. We were free.